Hey guys, today I want to talk to you about the top 10 mistakes public speakers make. Whether you're a leader, a pastor, a community group facilitator, a Sunday school teacher, wherever you are, you most likely will have to speak publicly. And I want to share with you the top 10 mistakes public speakers make. I personally have made every single one of these mistakes, and I'm happy to share with you my failures so that you can have success. Number one, providing too much information. As speakers, we study so much and we get so much information that our brain is just exploding with it, and we want to just tell people everything they can possibly hear or even don't want to hear. So what we do is we make people drink from a fire hydrant. Don't do that. Don't provide too much information. Be like that skilled surgeon that cuts away at everything that is unnecessary. And keep in mind that all of the information that you have not shared, all of the facts and figures and examples and illustrations and stories that you might not have delivered in your main speech or talk, you can use them later in different settings, more informal settings, and those things will come and be very valuable. So number one mistake, sharing too much information. Number two mistake public speakers make is they provide not enough information. What happens is very often people who speak publicly, they assume the group or the public or the audience to which they're speaking to already knows what they're talking about. Number one rule in public speaking, don't assume anything. You need to explain things in a way where people understand where you're coming from. Otherwise, people will just be looking at you and are going to be extremely confused. So the second mistake that many times public speakers make is we provide too little information. Third mistake is assuming people know what you're talking about. Most of the time, people don't know what you're talking about. They don't have a clue. They came into the auditorium, or they came into church, they came into a community group, they came into a business setting, they came into whatever sphere of life that you're in with 100 different problems and issues that they're dealing with in their own mind. So it's not as if they've been studying the subject the entire time. So don't assume that people know what you're talking about, and make sure to explain it with clarity. Number four, not putting the cookies on the bottom shelf. Here's what I mean. We need to make the information we're presenting very simple, very relevant. It needs to be contextual. And what happens often is we provide these very lofty, robust ideas of all these conglomerations that are synthesizing together, and people are just looking at you having no idea what you're talking about. Put the cookies on the bottom shelf. Make your information very, very easy to understand, very easy to grasp, very easy to comprehend, very easy to consume, just like somebody would have a reach of getting the cookies on the bottom shelf. Number five, you study too much. A lot of us who are speakers and we publicly speak, we're just book nerds. We love to study, we love to read, we love to get all these different ideas out there. We're studying too much. There has to be a point when you put the pen down, close the laptop, close your office door, and go deliver that talk. Number six, you study too little. Very often what happens is you're not preparing during the week, you're not preparing during the time that was allotted for you, and then when you get up to speak, you really don't know what you're talking about. I like to use the illustration that when we're presenting something, whether it's a sermon or it's a talk or it's a Sunday school lesson or we're in our community group, we need to be like a fish in water, very easily swimming in and out of the different concepts that we're talking about. And the way that we're going to be able to do that is if we saturate our mind with this information. Talk about it with your coworkers, talk about it with your spouse, talk about it with your church members, talk about it with somebody you meet at Starbucks, but keep that information very, very fresh so that when you're delivering the talk, you know exactly what you're talking about. Number seven, you speak for too long. I have never ever given a talk or a sermon where I spoke very short and people said, you know what, you should have gone longer. No one will ever complain if you end the talk or the sermon earlier. And what happens is the worst thing that can happen is during your speech, during your talk, people begin to think about what they're going to have for lunch. There's a mental expiration date and a clock that is in the minds of every single person. And when they're listening to you, the moment you start going into overtime, that's the moment when the time is against you. So Don't speak for too long. Speak for just the right amount of time. If you're just beginning to be a public speaker, or you're just beginning to teach a Sunday school class or a community group, or you're preaching a sermon, it's better to err on the side of being a lot shorter than being a lot longer. Number 8 mistake. You're being too enthusiastic and you're just being really, really charismatic, and this information is so awesome, right? It's hard to listen like that. So what you need to do, you need to make pauses when you speak. These things help people digest your information. So what happens is, during your speech, you need to have highs and you need to have lows. You need to have a crescendo and you need to have a diminuendo. Because if you're speaking right here the entire time, people will have a very difficult time listening to you. Imagine if you're in your car listening to your favorite song and it's on full blast the entire time. It's going to get a little bit tiring. Number 9, you're too monotonous and you sound like the guy from the Red Eye commercial, and everybody's yawning in the audience because you're too monotonous. You need to add energy. You need to add enthusiasm. You need to enunciate certain words that you're saying. You cannot be monotonous, because it's very, very boring to listen to somebody who's speaking like this the entire time, and we've all made this mistake as speakers. So do not be monotonous. Number 10 mistake public speakers make is we don't practice what we preach. If you're speaking about being a person who needs to be generous and needs to tithe to church, then you should be the one that tithes more than most of your friends. If you're the one that talks about being compassionate, you should show compassion. If you're teaching your Sunday school kids a certain lesson, you should be the one that's demonstrating it. And very often, knowledge is caught, not taught, which means that what you actually do speaks much higher volumes than what you say. So we must remember to practice what we preach. All right, guys, thanks for listening to these top 10 mistakes public speakers make. I hope this was helpful to you. For more content, visit my site, kipko.net, or check out my podcast. Search for the Fuel for Life podcast on iTunes. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next episode.